Parents chose my sister's birthday over my husband's funeral. Now they want his estate. The call came at 2:17 a.m. Nolan had collapsed at the airport hotel during his business trip to Chicago. By the time I reached the hospital, my husband of 12 years was gone. Heart attack, they said. No warning signs, just a faulty valve that had finally given out. In the cold fluorescent light of the hospital waiting room, I stood numb as the doctor explained medical terms my grief-addled brain couldn't process. My husband was dead at 45, and all I could think was who would help Jordan with his science project tomorrow. I called my parents from the hospital parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Mom," I whispered when she finally answered, "Nolan died." There was a pause, followed by a sleepy, "What, Serena? Do you know what time it is?" I repeated the words, each one ripping through me like physical pain. "Nolan had a heart attack. He's gone." Another pause. Then, "Oh, that's terrible. But honey, you know we have Millie's birthday dinner tomorrow. Have you made any arrangements yet? Could you possibly schedule things for next week?" That was the moment I realized I was truly alone in my grief. My 43-year-old sister's birthday dinner took precedence over my husband's death. The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and phone calls. Nolan's parents flew in immediately from Seattle, bringing his younger sister Alyssa with them. They moved into our guest rooms without hesitation, cooking meals I couldn't eat, answering the door when I couldn't face visitors, and most importantly, helping 10-year-old Jordan process the incomprehensible loss of his father. My parents stopped by exactly once, for 38 minutes. They brought a casserole that still had the price tag from the deli attached and awkwardly patted Jordan's head before making their exit. "We really need to get back," my mother explained, checking her watch. "We have the party planner coming to finalize Millie's birthday arrangements." I watched them leave, too hollow to even feel hurt anymore. On the day we buried Nolan, my sister Millie sent a text. "Sorry I can't make it to the funeral. Getting my hair done for the party. We'll drop by when things settle down." She attached a gift card to a local restaurant chain, her idea of condolence. I deleted the message without replying. Nolan's family and our friends filled the funeral home. His colleagues from the architectural firm where he'd been partner came in force, sharing stories of his brilliance, his mentorship, his unwavering ethics. Jordan stood beside me, his small hand in mine, receiving condolences with a poise that broke my heart. At 10 years old, my son was showing more maturity than my entire family combined. That evening, as we returned to a house full of food brought by neighbors and friends, my phone lit up with social media notifications. My sister's birthday celebration was in full swing at an expensive downtown restaurant, the same one where Nolan had proposed to me 13 years earlier. My mother had posted dozens of photos, all smiling faces and champagne toasts, celebrating our beautiful Millie nothing more important than family on special days. Nothing more important than family except, apparently, when that family was me. I turned off my phone and sat on the back deck with Nolan's father, Richard, watching the sunset and sharing stories about the man we'd both loved. "You know," Richard said quietly, "Nolan told me once that marrying you was the smartest thing he ever did. Not just because he loved you, though God knows he did, but because you had the strength he admired most in people, the strength to choose what matters and let the rest go." "I don't feel very strong right now," I admitted. Richard's weathered hand covered mine. "You will again, and when you do, remember what Nolan valued. He married you because you saw beyond the trappings to what was real. Don't lose that clarity now, when you need it most." As the last light faded from the sky, I wondered if I would ever feel clarity again. All I knew for certain was that the family I'd been born into had shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. The question was, what was I going to do about it? "Yeah, my name is Serena Collins, formerly Serena Blackwood. I met Nolan Collins when I was 27 and he was 37, both of us volunteering at a weekend build for Habitat for Humanity. I was there with my workplace volunteer group. He was one of the project architects donating his expertise. By the end of the day, My hands were blistered from hammering. My clothes were filthy. And I'd agreed to have dinner with him the following night. My parents' reaction to Nolan was immediate disapproval disguised as concern. "He's too old for you," my mother said. Her lips pursed. Men that age looking at younger women usually have something wrong with them. "And what does he do? Architecture?" My father's tone suggested Nolan might as well have said he was a street performer. "Is there any actual money in that, not like there is in finance?" My father, a mid-level bank manager, considered himself an authority on proper careers. Millie, 2 years older than me and still living at home, while finding herself on our parents' dime, was more direct. "Is he rich at least? Because if you're going to deal with someone that old, there should be compensation." I didn't bother explaining that Nolan wasn't old, that he was a partner in one of the city's most respected architectural firms, or that he was kind, brilliant, and made me laugh like no one ever had. I already knew these weren't qualities my family valued. Their attitude changed precisely 3 months into our relationship, when Nolan invited all of us to dinner at his home, a stunning modern house overlooking the lake that he'd designed himself. Suddenly, my mother wanted details about where things were heading. My father engaged Nolan in conversations about investments. Millie started calling him brother-in-law, even though Nolan hadn't proposed yet. "They're just getting to know him," I told myself, ignoring the fact that they were getting to know his bank account, not the man. When Nolan proposed 6 months later, my family attended our engagement dinner with enthusiasm that felt hollow even then. At the wedding, my mother complained about the venue too modern, the food too unusual, and the fact that I'd chosen simple elegance over the elaborate princess affair she'd envisioned for me since childhood. My father spent the reception networking with Nolan's business associates. Millie, my maid of honor, gave a speech that included the line, "I always told Serena to marry smart," and boy did she listen, accompanied by a wink that made several guests shift uncomfortably. Only Nolan's family embraced me completely. His parents, Richard and Evelyn, welcomed me with genuine warmth. His sister Alyssa became the sibling I'd always wished I had. His friends became my friends. His world expanded to include me naturally, without reservation. For 12 years, this was our dynamic. My family tolerated our relationship while benefiting from it, accepting vacation invitations to Nolan's lake house, mentioning their architect's son-in-law in social settings, borrowing his professional contacts when convenient. Nolan bore it all with grace, seeing through their pretense, but loving me enough to overlook it. When Jordan was born, the divide became even clearer. Nolan's parents visited for 3 weeks, cooking, cleaning, and allowing us precious sleep while caring for their grandson. My parents came for one afternoon, stayed an hour, gave us a generic baby outfit, and left for a cruise they'd been planning. "They're just not baby people," I explained to Nolan, who nodded without comment, bouncing our newborn son with a tenderness that made my heart ache. Now Nolan was gone, and the family divisions were impossible to ignore. My in-laws had moved into our home without hesitation, providing the stability Jordan needed. My own parents hadn't even changed their plans for a birthday dinner. The day after the funeral, while Jordan was spending time with his grandparents, I finally checked my email. Among the condolence messages was one from Nolan's law firm requesting a meeting to discuss his estate. Though Nolan and I had always been transparent about finances, we were comfortable but not extravagantly wealthy by any measure. The legal aspects of his death weren't something I'd had bandwidth to consider. The meeting was set for the following morning. I arrived at the offices of Hamilton and Frost to find Philip Hamilton, Nolan's longtime friend and attorney, waiting with a compassionate expression and a cup of tea made exactly how I preferred it. "Serena," he said, giving me a brief hug, "I am so sorry about Nolan. He was one of the good ones. Thank you for seeing me so quickly." "Philip." "Of course. Nolan was meticulous about his affairs, as you know. He wanted to ensure you and Jordan would be taken care of without complications." Over the next hour, Philip explained the details of Nolan's will, our joint assets, and the life insurance policy he'd maintained. The amounts weren't staggering, We'd always lived well within our means, but they were substantial enough to provide security for Jordan and me as we rebuilt our lives. There's one more thing, Philip said, sliding a sealed envelope across the desk. Nolan left this with instructions that I give it to you privately. Back in my car, I carefully opened the envelope to find a letter written in Nolan's distinctive architect's handwriting. My dearest Serena, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me. And for that, I'm so sorry. The thought of leaving you and Jordan tears me apart. But knowing you, my practical, resilient love, you're already figuring out how to move forward. And that gives me peace. I've tried to make the financial aspects straightforward. The life insurance should provide a cushion while you adjust. The house is paid for. Jordan's education fund is secure. But money is just logistics. And we both know that. What matters is this: you and Jordan were the best parts of my life. Every day, even the hard ones, was better because you were in it. I want you to remember that on your hardest days now. I also want you to remember something you taught me. Family is more than blood. It's showing up. It's celebrating victories and carrying burdens together. It's choosing each other every day. Your parents and Millie, they've never seen the extraordinary woman I see. That's their loss, not your failing. Don't waste energy trying to change their vision. Instead, cherish the people who see you clearly and love you completely. Be brave about boundaries. Be generous with forgiveness where it's earned. And never ever settle for less love than you deserve. From anyone. I love you eternally. Take care of our boy. And when you're ready, find joy again. It would honor me most to know you're still living fully. All my heart. Nolan. I sat in the parking lot, tears streaming down my face, reading and rereading his words. Even now, even gone, Nolan understood what I needed to hear. He'd seen the dynamics with my family more clearly than I had allowed myself to, and he'd given me permission to acknowledge what I'd always known but never confronted. That evening, as Jordan was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. Serena, have you had a chance to meet with Nolan's lawyers yet? She asked without preamble. No. How are you holding up? No, how's Jordan doing? Just a direct inquiry about money. Yes, I said simply. And what did they say is everything? Taken care of? The delicacy with which she approached the question about finances contrasted sharply with her bluntness about everything else. Jordan and I will be okay. Nolan was responsible. Well, of course, but details would be helpful. Your father and I were thinking we should come over tomorrow to discuss everything. There are considerations you might not have thought of. I closed my eyes. Nolan's letter fresh in my mind. Be brave about boundaries. I don't think that's necessary right now. Mom, I'm still processing everything. Serena, she said, her voice taking on the impatient tone I knew well. This isn't about emotions. This is practical. There will be decisions to make. And frankly, you've never been good with financial matters. This was categorically untrue. I had an MBA and had managed our household finances throughout our marriage, with Nolan and I making major decisions as equal partners. I appreciate the concern, but I have it handled. A pause. Then, your father thinks we should discuss the life insurance. Since we've helped you so much over the years, it would be appropriate to... Helped me how? Exactly. The words escaped before I could filter them. Serena, what kind of question is that? We're your parents. We've always supported you. Really? Because you couldn't even reschedule a birthday dinner when my husband died. Another pause. That's not fair. Millie had people coming from out of town. We couldn't just cancel. Of course you could have. You chose not to. My mother's voice hardened. I don't think this is a productive conversation. You're clearly emotional right now. We'll come by tomorrow at 10 to discuss the arrangements. Your father thinks a third of the insurance money would be fair compensation for all we've done. The audacity stole my breath. A third of the money meant to support Nolan's son and widow. For what? For showing up at our house for less than an hour after he died. For missing his funeral for a birthday party. Now you're just being dramatic. No. Mom, I'm finally being clear. There will be no discussion about Nolan's estate with you or Dad. The money is for Jordan's future and our stability. And don't come tomorrow. I won't be opening the door. I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking but my mind surprisingly calm. For the first time since Nolan's death, I felt something other than grief resolve. My phone immediately lit up with text messages from both parents, alternating between guilt trips and thinly veiled threats about legal options they might pursue. I blocked their numbers without reading beyond the first few words. Upstairs, I found Jordan sitting on his bed, hugging the leather portfolio of sketches Nolan had drawn him over the years. Buildings, animals, fantastical machines. My son looked up with eyes so like his father's. Dad said architects help build the future, he said quietly. Even when they're gone, what they create stays. I sat beside him, drawing him close. That's exactly right. And you know what else stays? All the love he put into being your dad, that's in you forever. Grandma Evelyn says we're going to be okay because Dad made sure of it. She's right, your dad was very smart about taking care of us. Jordan nodded, his small face serious. Is that why Grandma Blackwood called about the money? My heart sank. You heard that. Just the end. She sounded mad. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults disagree about what's important. Your dad left money to take care of you and me. And Grandma and Grandpa Blackwood have different ideas about that than I do. They want our money, but Dad left it for us. Yes, he did, and that's how it's going to stay. Jordan was quiet for a moment. They didn't even come to the funeral. Dad would be disappointed. Out of the mouths of babes. Maybe, but what matters is that so many people who loved Dad did come. People show who they really are in hard times. After Jordan fell asleep, I went downstairs to find Richard, Evelyn, and Alyssa sitting in the kitchen, cups of tea before them. We couldn't help overhearing, Richard said. Your mother called the house phone after you blocked her. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Evelyn reached for my hand. Don't apologize. We've seen how they treat you for years. Nolan used to worry about it. You know, not because he thought less of you for it, but because he hated seeing you hurt. I always made excuses for them, I admitted. I kept thinking if I just achieved enough, proved myself enough, they'd see me differently. Alyssa shook her head. Some people are incapable of seeing beyond their own needs. It's not a reflection on you. We talked late into the night. These people who had become my true family, not by birth, but by choice. They shared more stories about Nolan, memories I'd never heard, moments from before he met me that filled in colors of the man I'd loved. For the first time since his death, I laughed, really laughed, at tales of teenage Nolan's failed attempts at rebellion, at the disastrous first apartment he'd designed, at the endearing awkwardness that had preceded the confidence I'd always known in him. Before heading to bed, Richard hugged me tightly. You're our daughter, he said firmly. That doesn't change because Nolan's gone. You and Jordan are Colin's family, period. That night, I slept without nightmares for the first time since the phone call that had shattered my world. The next morning, despite my warning, my parents arrived precisely at 10. I watched through the front window as they pulled into the driveway. My father's face set in the stern expression he used for bank customers with overdrafts. Richard appeared beside me. Want me to send them away? I considered it, then shook my head. No, I need to do this myself, clearly and finally. We'll be right in the kitchen if you need us. I opened the door before they could ring the bell, not wanting them to wake Jordan, who had finally fallen into a normal sleep pattern. Serena, my mother began without greeting. This behavior is unacceptable, blocking our calls. Hanging up on me, we raised you better than that. Did you? Because from where I'm standing, your parenting seems to have prioritized everything except kindness and respect. My father stepped forward. Young lady, we did not come here to be insulted. We came to discuss practicalities. The practicalities are simple, I said, not moving from the doorway. My husband died. My 10-year-old son lost his father. And you want to know what's in it for you. That's a terrible mischaracterization. My mother protested. We're simply concerned. About the money. Yes, that's clear. Let me save us all time. There will be no money for you. Not a third. Not a tenth. Not a dollar. Nolan's estate is for supporting his son and me, exactly as he intended. My father's face reddened. After everything we've done. What exactly have you done? I interrupted. A lifetime of deference finally evaporating. when Nolan and I got married. You criticized the wedding. When Jordan was born, you visited once. When Nolan died, you couldn't even reschedule a birthday dinner. So please, tell me what I've missed. What exactly have you done that entitles you to the money my husband worked for? We are your parents, my mother snapped. We supported you your entire life. No, you tolerated me when I didn't inconvenience you, and used me when my connections benefited you. That's not support. That's opportunism. This is that man talking, my father said dismissively. He always thought he was better than us. Nolan never said a negative word about either of you. Despite how poorly you treated him, he saw your behavior clearly, but loved me enough to let me handle it in my own time. And now I am. I took a deep breath. I won't be giving you money. I won't be tolerating your disrespect of my late husband or the family we built. And until you can acknowledge your behavior and genuinely apologize, I won't be maintaining contact. My mother gasped. You can't be serious. You'd cut us off, your own parents. I'm setting boundaries, something I should have done years ago. Nolan and Jordan deserve better than what you've shown them. And so do I. This is ridiculous, my father sputtered. Millie would never speak to us this way. Probably because you never expected her to plan her birthday around a funeral. The standards have always been different. My mother's expression hardened. Fine, if that's how you want it, but don't come crying to us when you realize how difficult life is on your own. I'm not on my own, I said quietly. I have Jordan. I have friends who've shown up every day since Nolan died. And I have in-laws who are more family to me than you've ever been. I started to close the door, then paused. One more thing. I've instructed the funeral home to send you the bill for the flowers you sent. They were lovely. But since you're so concerned about financial accounting between us, I wouldn't want to leave any debts outstanding. The look of shock on their faces as I closed the door gave me no pleasure. Only a sad confirmation that I'd been seeking love from people incapable of giving it freely. In the kitchen, Evelyn was making pancakes with Jordan, carefully showing him how to flip them. Alyssa was cutting fruit. Richard looked up from his crossword puzzle and met my eyes with a nod of understanding. Everything okay? He asked. It will be, I answered truthfully. 6 months after Nolan's death, life had found a new rhythm. Not normal. I doubted there would ever be a normal again, but sustainable. Jordan had returned to school full-time, was seeing a child psychologist who specialized in grief, and had recently joined a youth architecture program that Nolan's firm had started in his memory. I'd taken a leave of absence from my marketing job, using the time to reassess what I wanted my future to look like. Nolan's parents had returned to Seattle but visited monthly, maintaining the close bond with Jordan through video calls in between. Alyssa had moved to our city permanently, taking a job that, coincidentally, put her just 20 minutes from our home. My parents had made several attempts at contact, each focusing on my ungrateful attitude, rather than acknowledging their behavior. I maintained the boundaries I'd set, redirecting their calls to voicemail and returning mail unopened. Millie sent a text suggesting I was being dramatic to get attention, which only confirmed I'd made the right decision. On a crisp fall afternoon, I was sorting through Nolan's office when I found a folder labeled Thai 10th Anniversary. Inside were plans for a surprise trip he'd been organizing for our upcoming milestone, a tour of architectural wonders across Europe that he knew I'd always wanted to see. There were detailed itineraries, hotel reservations, tickets to exclusive tours. The trip was scheduled to begin 2 weeks after the day he died. I sat on his office floor, surrounded by his meticulous plans, and cried, not just for the trip we'd never take, but for all the thoughtfulness that had characterized our life together. Later that day, I showed the folder to Jordan. Dad was planning an awesome surprise. I explained. We were going to see all these amazing buildings he loved. Jordan studied the carefully annotated maps, the circled landmarks. We should still go, he said suddenly, like a tribute to Dad. The idea took root immediately. You think so? He nodded earnestly. Dad would want us to. He could still show us these places, just differently than he planned. 2 months later, Jordan and I stood before the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, the first stop on what had become our Nolan tour. I held Nolan's notes in one hand and Jordan's hand in the other as we studied the soaring spires and intricate facades. Dad's notes say this is architecture that reaches for heaven, Jordan said, reading the careful handwriting. He says it reminds us that beautiful things take time and many hands to build. I looked at my son, this remarkable extension of Nolan's heart and mind, and felt a surge of gratitude so powerful it momentarily took my breath away. We were building something too, a new life without Nolan physically present, but with his love as our foundation. That evening, I posted a photo of Jordan standing before the cathedral, captioned simply, "Following Daddy's map through the world's greatest buildings that Nolan's tour had legacy of love." Within minutes, my phone lit up with supportive comments from friends and Nolan's colleagues. His architectural community embraced our journey, offering suggestions for hidden gems to visit and contacts in various cities. The next morning, I woke to find a notification that my mother had commented on the post. "Why weren't we told about this trip? This seems inappropriate, so soon after your loss. Call us immediately." I deleted the comment, then made the post, and future ones, visible only to the people who had supported us through the worst months of our lives. Those who had shown up, those who had seen us clearly and loved us completely. As Jordan and I continued our journey, following Nolan's carefully planned route through Barcelona, Paris, Rome, and beyond, I felt my husband's presence in every architectural detail he'd wanted to show us. In my darkest moments after his death, I couldn't imagine finding joy again. Yet here we were, honoring his passion by embracing it as our own. The final stop on our tour was a small village in the Italian countryside, where Nolan had arranged for us to stay in a renovated medieval tower he'd discovered during a conference years earlier. As Jordan and I climbed the ancient stone stairs to the top, the setting sun bathed the landscape in golden light. "Dad would love this view," Jordan said, his face tilted up to catch the last warm rays. "He would," I agreed. "And he would love seeing you here, taking it all in." "Do you think he can see us?" I considered the question carefully. I don't know exactly how it works, but I believe the love between people doesn't just disappear. It changes form, maybe, but it stays. Jordan nodded, satisfied with this answer. Like architecture, the architect might be gone, but what they built remains. Exactly like that. As darkness fell and the stars appeared above the Italian countryside, I silently thanked Nolan, not just for planning this journey, but for showing me what real family looked like, for loving me well enough that I finally recognized when I wasn't being loved properly, for giving me the clarity to choose what mattered and let the rest go. My phone buzzed with a text from Alyssa. "How's the tower? Nolan talked about that place for years after he found it." I sent back a photo of Jordan silhouetted against the starry sky, adding magical. "We're collecting moments to bring home with us." Home. No longer just a place, but a truth home was where we were seen clearly and loved completely, where boundaries were respected and support was given freely, where Nolan's legacy lived on in the people who had truly been his family, by blood or by choice. I had lost my husband, but in that devastating loss, I had finally found clarity about what family really meant. Not obligation or shared DNA, but consistent love and respect. Not perfect people, but people perfectly willing to show up when it mattered most. As Jordan and I made plans for our return trip, I realized we weren't just going back to a house and memories. We were going home to the family we had chosen and who had chosen us right back. The most precious legacy Nolan had left behind.